Forbes India presents AWS The Mavericks in association with Matrix Partners India.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Forbes India presents AWS The Mavericks, the CTO Conversation on modern applications and the necessary for the post-pandemic evolution. To the viewers who have just joined in, thank you for taking out time and being safe and following all the COVID appropriate behavior that is necessary at this stage. The Omicron variant is back, and it might just threaten and disrupt livelihoods and business activity. We have with us today some of the brightest minds in the world of technology and who would help us understand how modern applications are making corporates more nimble, delivering the purpose that they are meant for, and helping companies innovate. We have Mr. Rakshit Daga, CTO of Big Basket, who had earlier been in teams of SAP. We have Mr. Arvind Neelkantan, tech evangelist, and for Epic Games, who had earlier been driving innovation at Disney and Nickelodeon. And we have Mr. Sanjay Suri, CPO and CTO at Nykaa,
Hi
to
guys.
help us understand the broader picture and give us a whole perspective of the industry and the business. We have Mr. Satinder Singh, who heads the solution architect function for digital native business at AWS. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today. Modern applications have been disrupting economic models, payment operating models, and consumer behavior. The digital native businesses understood this and adopted this very early on. This early mover advantage gave them the actual pivot to help move ahead their businesses during the pandemic and also reduce the vulnerability which some of the legacy platforms had. In such an environment where there's a constant evolution of tech, it is only the nimble that will survive, and modern applications are right at the top of this. The CTOs and the CEOs are at the center of these business decisions. And to ensure that these corporates take the direction that the company wants them, and they can either be disruptive or at least constantly be innovating. I throw this floor open and start with Mr. Rakshit. Mr. Rakshit, help us understand how modern applications are plugging the holes in the value chain of your business. It will be open, and then we can take it forward to the other panelists.
Sure. Thanks. It's a pleasure to be with all of you. And see, the modern applications, so to speak, are the cornerstone of a business like Big Baskets, right? And the whole idea is how do you create an infrastructure and architecture which sets you up for massive amounts of scale growth that could potentially happen overnight, and at the same time continue to optimize on cost in terms of infrastructure spend, etc. Right? I think 10 years back, the conversation used to be about whether you run on the cloud, you don't run on the cloud, etc. But I think those sort of questions have now been settled. Pretty much every agile modern application or platform will try to go for an auto scale model, especially organizations which are catering to modern needs like e-commerce, etc. are typically looking at a pattern of activity which goes up and down, and your business needs to be able to kind of cater to that. That's one. Second, I think what we saw during the pandemic, especially in the first phase of the pandemic, suddenly because of things like the lockdown, scale suddenly shot up, and that really tested every modern architecture's capability of being able to scale whether whatever fault lines existed were exposed. For us, for example, we saw 6x traffic overnight. We did encounter a few challenges, but because of the fact that we were primarily architecture that was completely based in the cloud, we were set up for scale, etc. It didn't take us too long to actually respond to a 6x traffic spike. So, all in all, I would start by saying every part of your enterprise application is now relying on the idea that uh, applications and large platforms need to be distributed, need to be able to cover and or attack problems in a fashion where scale is not a problem. And all of our technology kind of tries to attack that problem. So, yeah.
Mr. Neelkantan?
Hi, glad to be part of this panel. I just want to give a quick introduction about Epic Games itself so that there's a context about what I'm going to be talking about. Now, at Epic, we want to enable as many people as possible to create immersive real-time 3D content. And of course, there's limitless possibilities when it comes to the creation of such content, including on augmented reality, virtual reality, and of course, the new buzzword, which is metaverse. And we at Epic Games are pretty much very much invested in creating tools and skills that is required to build for the metaverse. Now, during the pandemic, it was very important that we are able to provide not just tools, but also training in order to help people who are otherwise who want to contribute into the metaverse, but don't have the ability to like the skills or the hardware in order to contribute to the creation of whatever kind of real time 3D application is. And I think that's when modern applications and the agile way of working, where we had to have the speed to market be pretty fast, because the pandemic hit and we had folks who were at home working remotely, and we wanted to make sure that people are still able to get on with their production process, get on with their training process, get on with their skilling up processes without having to rely on hardware that was usually at their offices, or skillings that is usually happening at a particular geographical location. And because of that, out of India, we were able to innovate, and we worked on this virtual machine platform on AWS, by the way, which allows for anyone to log into a look at EC2 or a virtual machine on the cloud, and have instructor-led training happening through a virtual machine, so that everyone who wanted to get skilled up on Unreal Engine, which is the engine that is made by Epic Games that allows you to create this kind of real-time 3D applications, and skill themselves up through through this dashboard. And the reason why I'm bringing up this example is because without the ability to think fast, to use the technologies that were existing and leveraging them to create, I would say, like almost a prototype in an extremely fast basis, and leveraging the disadvantage that we had during the pandemic, which has affected a lot of lives, and turning that into a place where people can use the downtime in order to skill up is very important. And I believe that's why the philosophy of modern applications, the philosophy of being able to think on the feet while faced with adversities like this is important, and the platform of modern application thinking helps you do that.
Right. Mr. Suri?
Hi. So jumping into it, just give you perspective on how we look at building modern apps. Now, begs the question: what is a modern app? So, modern app is not just the app that you install on your phone, but everything that goes into supporting it, building it, configuring it. So, the way I look at it is basically it's an app is an amalgamation of components. Now these components are like Lego blocks. You put them together to build the app. Just to make it a little concrete, some of these components could be landing pages, they could be ratings and reviews, they could be the catalog, which is the collection of SKUs. In our case, we're an e-commerce company, so the collection of SKUs that you want to display to a user, the coupons that are valid for a user. So all of these are built as separate components, and then the app is an amalgamation of that. And when you do that, then it gives you tremendous agility because the components are owned by independent teams. They keep evolving those. Again, just to make it a little concrete. So let's say the checkout team that owns payments, they're going to keep making the checkout experience richer and richer. And users who are more likely to do COD, we'll show them COD first. We'll personalize the whole experience. People who are got saved cards always do that. We'll try and give them a closer experience to single click, stuff like that. So these all components evolve independently, and the app is an amalgamation of these, right? So just at the outset, I wanted to set that context. But so we have this beauty app where we're selling cosmetics, we're selling personal care, and COVID hits us. And if you rewind about 18 months, you'll remember that there were these red, orange, and green zones. And in the orange zones, only essentials were allowed to be delivered and bought and delivered, right? Red, I believe nothing was, they were like these lockdown societies or areas, right? Nothing was allowed. So because we have a strong personalization component, use based on that, we knew we could figure out from geotagging, geolocation, we could figure out where this user is. We mapped that data, figured out is this red, orange, or green. If it was orange, then we limited the catalog they could see to essential products only, and therefore, and then we cut COD because these guys, it was not possible for them to use COD. Had to be minimum touch, right? And then we configured all of this without any coding in a couple of days, and we launched an essential store. So the experience was as follows: if users A, B, and C were in red, orange, and green zones, then as soon as they open the app, red would say, "Sorry, not delivering anything. Take care. Be careful, etc. Hopefully, we'll be able to serve you soon." The guys in orange will say that since you're in orange, we're only serving essentials, and then anything they browsed and bought was essential. We could deliver it. We were allowed to deliver it. We didn't allow COD. We switched it off in the checkout options. And then similarly, the folks in green, it was as though nothing happened, right? For them, they just saw some precautionary banners around taking care on COVID. So those are the kind of things we did. To directly answer your question as to what we did during COVID. Now you also got to remember that no one was prepared for COVID. Nobody knew it's going to hit us, and such use cases will come about. But when you think in terms of component, you build smart components, and you build this glue, which is ability to personalize or just customize based on broad user segments, everything people see, the banners, the SKUs, the coupons, everything. Then many possibilities come about. And when COVID hit us, in a matter of a couple of days, like I said, we were able to launch this. And another thing we could launch was, because remember, we had 75 physical stores that time, all of them shut. However, we were allowed to deliver orders from there. So the other thing we enabled was hyperlocal delivery. So when an order comes and we knew a store was in a position to serve it because it's in the local 20K radius or 5K radius, whatever it was, we were able to deliver that order, assign that order to that store, and the store staff was able to deliver it. So these are a couple of concrete examples of how we could react very quickly without any code change, and minor code change, and achieve this. But the principles were using component based, building very strong components which come together to build apps. That's how we operate, and that's our DNA. Thanks.
Very interesting. I'll bring Satinder in here. Satinder, you have the skill of looking at a picture both from 30,000 feet above and also going micro and helping clients, achieve their purpose. Do you think that there's a degree of acceptance which has increased? Seeing what the panelists have been talking about, Rakshit, Mr. Nilkandan, and Mr. Suri. Do you think the degree of acceptance has increased for enterprises to adapt and leverage on technology, particularly modern applications, in these last
First,
20?
first and foremost, thanks for inviting me. Quite similar to what other panelists have seen, Salil, what we are starting to see in India is this perfect storm of digitization with businesses of all sizes now realizing the value of technology. In fact, the value proposition of technology and digital has never been clearer. As I talk to customers, especially India business, there is a realization that businesses that were thinking deeply about technology and cloud are coming out of this crisis much stronger. NASCOM recently had a report wherein they said the tech intensity of Indian enterprises is going up from 2% to 5%. A small change, but moving up very, very dramatically. So, what we see across all the companies and organizations is that they are looking to become more agile so that they can innovate and respond to these changes faster. And with the level of uncertainty that we are dealing with, companies are realizing that they require a very different kind of an application, uh, what they created few years back. Now, applications need to scale quickly to potentially maybe millions of users, manage petabytes of data, if not exabytes, and respond in millisecond. And loosely we can call these as modern applications. They cover variety of use cases from, let's say, web, mobile applications, IoT applications, AML workloads, batch data processing, microservices backend, so on and so forth. And that's something that we clearly see across broad spectrum of our customers. Uh, my fellow panelists have talked about the kind of impact that they've seen in their business, and I think we've worked very closely with them. But I'll give you two specific examples. The first one is around scale, and this was with Upstocks. So as Sanjay said, no one prepared for pandemic, and so was the case with Upstocks. Upstocks created this mobile app called Upstocks Pro mobile app just before the pandemic hit, and this app provided similar functionality to as the customers got it on their desktops, allowing users to analyze their stock positions, make trades, and they were thinking about it just before the pandemic began. By end of Q2 2020, number of active users on that app jumped by 72%, and 85% of the trades that were placed were through this mobile app. Now that's one end of spectrum wherein customers were trying to deal with scale. The second example that I wanted to give, which is what Rakshit kind of alluded to, is the cost optimization. And Book My Show is another customer. And incidentally, look, just before the pandemic happened, Book My Show reported their highest ever peak of 2.1 million bookings on 12th of January. And come April, the business comes to pretty much standstill. They, in fact, then looked at how do they operate in these conditions, and they migrated completely to AWS and trading capex to pay as you go model, lowering their total cost of ownership by almost 70%. So whether it's Upstocks, BMS, the need for digital has dramatically increased during the pandemic.
Right. Right. Now, Satinder, I'll take your question forward when you spoke about Upstocks and the fact about the cost itself. Which obviously gets this decision making does get disrupted during the pandemic. But throwing the same question ahead to all the three panelists, uh, how do you all plan on the cost factor and its effectiveness going ahead, assuming that you have certain business decisions in mind, uh, but then something comes and it's disrupted your business entirely. uh, how much does the cost effectiveness go down, particularly in 2020, 2021? Starting with Mr. Daga.
So let me take that. Sorry, go ahead if someone else wants to go first.
Go for it. Go for it.
So I think regardless of the situation, uh, you need to have some uh, way of benchmarking your costs. And while all our systems are based on elastic capacity, and as traffic grows they expand, goes down they shrink, there's a certain stack size, certain number of machines and services that are deployed, even if you're getting one order a day, right? And for some time, I think I believe it was in April 2020 that we were in that situation, late March, April, somewhere there, right? So obviously, there's only so much you can do. You're not going to switch off your stack. Um, April was different. But in general, what we do is I just do a basic rule of thumb. I take my entire bill of running my services. We're on AWS, so take the entire thing and bunch of other services. So we add them up for the month. We divide them by the number of orders we get monthly, and that gives me a per order spend. And that we have some internal benchmarks, and there's a range. It keeps fluctuating within that range, which is like 20%. And we hold ourselves, when I say we, I mean the engineering team holds itself accountable to that range. And there have been cases where it jumps up or comes down, but that sort of raises those are my high. That's so we have a high water mark. If it goes up by that, then we dig in and we are able to figure out, given the various dashboards we have, to dig into various stacks, whether, and the stacks are all segregated, right? Like whether it's payments, checkout, or search and recommendations, or the catalog, or the ad tech stuff like that, right? So then we dig in and see which part of the thing is breaching this high water mark, and then we try to keep a tab on that. So that's how we generally keep a tab on this in general.
Right.
Sure, I can add to that a little bit. So much like what Sanjay said, we also do a cost per order benchmark. In addition to that, we also kind of look at cost per request served. And the other philosophy that we tend to follow is, given that we are living in a decentralized sort of application architecture where every team owns various components, we set up goals for each team to monitor and look at cost overruns for those teams. And then when the need arises, you kind of deep dive into a specific area and see if there's anything that can be done to actually optimize the cost. What I've learned in my tenure at Big Basket specifically is, because we continuously have grown over the years, is that you need to, especially in a high growth business, you need to balance the act of optimizing cost versus focusing on the growth. And the model that has pretty much worked well for us is, every so often, maybe every 3 months, you do a cost review, identify things that have regressed, create out some bandwidth and projects to actually get those under control, and then yeah, that's how the journey sort of keeps going, because growth is going to be your daily bread and butter. It's important to have a structured process where you look at the cost element every once in a while and do the necessary course correction if needed. So that's really been the philosophy for us.
Arvind?
No, to chime in on that front, at Epic Games, we are actually, I'm at a very different position than what the rest of you folks are in. And we took a very different approach. Of course, Epic Games is one of the largest users of AWS. There's a number of applications, but I'm going to focus on an application that we are developing that out of India, and that is the live training dashboard that allows for upskilling of people in Unreal Engine, and we manage that out of AWS virtual machines. Now, we took an approach where we were looking at the next 2 years. How can we, and we were, while cost was very important, we were also looking at, like, how can we almost like invest into upskilling people for the next 2 years while we are being hit with this pandemic. But while optimizing for cost, we were essentially looking at virtual machine usage for people during training, and we were, and sometimes we even hit capacity limits on AWS because we were just like spinning up virtual machines for anyone who really requested for it. In terms of cost optimization for this one, we essentially had two parts to it. One, for the virtual machines that were being used, we scheduled the virtual machines rather than just keeping them on all the time, and that kind of reduced some cost. And we also added some pretty nifty tech inside the virtual machines, which allows you to monitor how much GPU and how much usage was going on in a particular machine. Like for example, in a G4D and 2x large instance, if the machine was just idle and if there's not a lot of GPU being used, because Unreal Engine is a very GPU intensive application, we would then like silently switch that machine off. At the same time, we also provided controls for the instructors who were teaching those classes to see if there are students who were not participating in the class due to various reasons, and they also had the ability to switch off machines, and all of this was provided through a very simple dashboard, which is less complicated than what you typically see on an AWS dashboard, because that could be fairly daunting, and it also require an account information to log into the dashboard. So we exposed all of that so that it provides a certain amount of autonomy to the instructors, and also add some tech behind the scenes to make sure that the applications were being used as efficiently as they are supposed to. And that's kind of how we did it.
Right. Right. So I take this opportunity to call on our viewers to share any questions they have. If there's a particular question for a particular panelist, please mention that, and we'll definitely take those questions. Arvind, I'll take in fact, you brought me to the next question that I was coming to, and I want you to start on this fact of how do you reskill or upskill your your employees to meet with the technical developments and requirements which are constantly changing. So what are you all exactly doing there? And then you could get in the other panels.
No, in terms of upskilling, I think, okay, it has to just be constant upskilling, really. It's constant learning, constantly figuring out what needs to be done, and considering that the tools and the toolings that we are providing to the larger audience in order to start developing developing for the metaverse or for any kind of real-time 3D applications, it's all about providing accessibility to them. The entry barriers that you have to cross in order to start learning, we figure those out. For example, if anyone in my team or anyone even who wants to use Unreal Engine, for example, the entry barrier for them is very low, in that the tool itself is now free. For any kind of non-game application, which includes automobile simulation, AEC, or film and television, Unreal Engine is available for you to download from the Unreal Engine website, and there's just and so that entry barrier is lost. Then what else is a barrier? The next barrier that we saw within not just the team but also again in our users was hardware. Today I have a 2070 laptop, RTX 2070. When I bought it, that was like awesome. And then within a few months, we had like a 3080 come up, RTX, and now we have 6000s, and it's very, very hard to keep up with this kind of hardware getting better and better. So how can we solve that? So that we solve through providing virtual machines. Next, then the next problem was geography. All right, you provided the virtual machines, you are able to look at you're able to remove that barrier. How do you make sure that that regardless of where you are in the world, you're still able to upskill yourself through anyone who's an expert around the world? And which is when once again this dashboard came into. In fact, that was pretty much the brainchild of the dashboard, which is you are able to have an instructor based in India who is teaching someone out of, let's say, Bangladesh, or someone out of even Europe. Um, so the idea of upskilling people within the organization and outside the organization itself is merely looking at what are all the barriers or what are all the problems that the users are facing in order to upskill. Because and the third one and the fourth one I also want to bring up, and this is something that we believe at Epic, is education is free. So if you want to learn about Unreal Engine, there is no you just sign up, and we provide we connect you to the instructors, and you get trained for free. So the idea is really looking at what are all the problems that my team or the users are having in order to learn this technology and to upskill themselves, and look at what are all the barriers for entry during every process of learning. So and addressing them as much as we can. And that's how this played out. So the virtual machine part, the instructors anywhere around the world part, and the Unreal Engine and the tools around it, including like Quixel or MetaHumans, which are all available for free for you to start using, is how we make sure that people the entry barriers or barriers generally are removed when they want to upskill themselves.
Right. Sanjay?
Okay, so that was a pretty great answer and your approach, Arvind. I'll actually touch upon some other aspects, which is I think it starts with hiring. You hire people who are strong coders, who have strong fundamentals. That there's no you can't teach anyone, or we don't want to be in the business of teaching coding to anyone. So no compromise there. But if that's the case, and then we look for high learnability and curiosity in our candidates. And once that is there, and for juniors or freshers, we have a great boot camp that we run, which lasts 2 months. We start with some basic servers, services, apps to build, and through 2 months they pick up a lot of stuff, right? And they're ready to join their teams, hit the ground running. um, Third is, our leaders, right, from tech leads or EMs or VPs, right? We're all very hands-on. We're great at teaching, great at architecture, great at design. Those are the harder things to teach people, and these are meta skills. And finally, all our leaders are like very passionate about mentoring. So I think if we go through this sequence, basically hire people who have high, great fundamentals, um, learnability, curiosity is high, and then they have strong leaders passionate about mentoring and superlative design and architecture skills. I think the whole virtuous cycle kicks off, and then besides that, we have an open policy. You could go to any online course in Coursera or anywhere, even long format courses, right? 6 months, 1 year, they get fully reimbursed. So that takes care of any fundamental skills people want to get into, or a space they want to get into. So I think we have all of these things which work very well for us. Uh, so yeah.
Rakshit?
Sure. So we see along the lines of what Sanjay said, we probably follow a two-pronged strategy. One is allowing people the ability to sign up for any kinds of courses and training. There's a structured kind of budget available that every employee in the engineering and product team can tap into. So that's one part of the story. The second part of the story is kind of fostering an open culture where seniors are able to participate in design discussions, reviews, etc. Everybody at the even at the highest level is actually quite hands-on in terms of participating in design discussions, giving feedback. And I completely agree with Sanjay when he mentioned the art of learning the meta skill of design is probably the most important education that junior engineers or people who are new into this job kind of need to take away when they interact with engineering leadership. Right. So that's really the attempt there is to build us into the culture of how designs are done, how design reviews happen, how the discussion kind of uh, takes place. Right. Besides this, the other policy that we follow is, as a team, we run multiple uh, engineering and application stacks, right? So we run all kinds of different programming languages, which is part of the Big Basket platform. What we allow is mobility within teams. So every once in a while, when somebody wants to switch the technology that he or she is learning, we allow that internal movement to happen, and we are very open and actually encouraging of engineers moving from under one manager to another manager. So these are kind of all the strategies we follow to make sure that the team is not only learning tech, but is also quite motivated with the work that they're doing.
And just taking this whole conversation forward, when you were, when all the three, all of you, Rakshit and Sanjay also spoke about it. Do you see the similar trend following in 2022? How much more are companies like you all going to leverage on technology and modern applications, be it investment, be it actual time? What happens in
Uh,
2022?
sure, I can take that. Uh,
Yeah.
so, so from that standpoint, 2022 is not really different, right? The focus may not necessarily be the pandemic, but the industry that we are in, the space that we are in, is a lot of stuff happening. That's a lot of room for innovation. There's all these new buzzwords that we want to focus on. Uh, Areas like quick commerce, improving the supply chain, figuring out a better way to do logistics, a better way to actually improve the customer experience. So the problems, there's umpteen problems to solve. There's constantly teams are focusing on various areas in terms of problem solving. So the technology focus is definitely not diluted. And what I would say is the modern technology stack is bread and butter, and day in and day out, we are solving problems to actually uh, kind of shape how the business functions.
Arvind?
Yeah, I think the future of using modern applications, or the philosophy of modern applications, is here to stay. I mean, if anything, during the pandemic, it taught you that you got to be extremely agile. You need to make sure that that you are able to make changes, like Sanjay said, really fast, so that without writing code, with minimal changes to your application, you're able to adapt and adopt to the changes in the environment. The During the pandemic, we were always envisioning a world where people were using, people are able to access technology and access tools for them to, once again, to contribute into the metaverse. But if anything, the pandemic kind of just accelerated the growth of how people were working. The vision of having remote workforces, the vision of having virtual machines, for that matter, all of that, where I was in 2019 thinking it's going to take at least 4 or 5 years, and now suddenly it's like, it's a reality. And now I think the future is really like, how can we uh, enable a remote workforce? How can we enable remote asset management? How do we enable remote working for like production pipeline management? And those are all the things that I think modern apps in going forward need to be thinking about, because I think I'm comfortable working from home, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to be like that for the next few years, if not forever. And I think those are all the kind of problems that we should be thinking. And of course, the pandemic helped throw some light on how we could solve them, but keeping those in mind is very important in the future.
Yeah. Sanjay?
Just want to add that everybody here, at least on the panel, I think, and we're all beneficiaries of the pandemic in some sense, because our businesses have gone up. People relied more and more on us. That's very clear. So therefore, the investments and the ways of working, they're only gonna we'll do more of the same, because speaking personally for us, whatever we had done served us very well during the pandemic, and during this last year and a half, 2 years, business has grown tremendously. It's testament to our approach and our investments. So they will continue. We'll continue to. So they'll just multiply over the next few years.
Right. Satinder, I'll bring you in here. If you could help us demystify really how the cloud is having a direct impact, on tracking modern applications and understand, actually revealing their health.
Sure. I think my fellow panelists have talked about how they've used cloud. Specifically talking about AWS, we have got over 200 services, databases, analytics, robotics, machine learning, AI, IoT, so on and so forth. If I have to pick some of the top ones that I think are fairly important in the current context of modern application, the first one is this whole event-driven and microservices-based architecture. Now, whether it's containers, serverless, they provide scalability, elasticity with negligible management overheads, and has a very, very dramatic impact and a direct impact on improving the TCO. In fact, we pioneered the event-driven serverless computing with launch of AWS Lambda. And with sole serverless, a whole generation of developers are going to grow up not thinking about servers, cluster. An example of that, again, is Make My Trip. They modernized their entire application stack during pandemic and saw a 20% improvement in their ability to bring up new application instances, roll out capabilities faster, while at the same time reducing cost by 25%. So that, I think, is one of the big chunk. The second one is this whole modern databases, as I call it. The old guard of notion of having a relational database or single kind of a database is not a scalable model anymore. Customers need the right tool for the right job. As an example, AWS, customers can choose over 15 purpose-built database engines to support diverse kind of requirements: relational, key value, document, in-memory, graph, ledger. You need to pick the right tool for the right kind of a use case. And another example of this is Games 24/7, which is a large gaming company in India, is using a graph database based on Neptune, a technology which is a graph database provided by AWS, to determine real-time player collusion and detect frauds in real-time basis. That's a very powerful capability. The next one, in fact, the next two ones are all related to data. And I think having a strong data strategies is becoming priority for most of the leading organizations, because whether it's any new business initiative or creating new customer experience, building new revenue streams, customers are realizing that their ability to quickly gather insight and get to truth is very, very crucial. And having all this data just doesn't increase agility. Agility comes from taking control of the data and pulling from it as much value as possible. There, Salil, we are seeing customers adopting machine learning in a very, very big and diverse ways. Now, whether it's enhancing customer experience, boosting productivity, supply chain management, fraud management, cutting costs, machine learning is helping organizations to tackle some of the biggest challenges and opportunities. Sanjay talked about personalization in a big way. Rakshit did talk about supply chain management. And there are numerous other examples. Again, I'll go back to Games 24/7 because they have transitioned from a data-driven enterprise to what I think is a model-driven enterprise, where they're using machine learning models guiding core business logic through operations. So they're using machine learning to customize the game playing experience based on user choices and interest, and using ML-driven fraud detection to prevent player collisions. So just to kind of summarize this, whether it is event-based architectures to modern databases, to data strategy, analytics, to machine learning, cloud provides all these technologies in a relatively easy to consume fashion. So it's not that you require a big team. And I think there was a discussion that was happening on skills. You can leverage cloud service providers and their managed services to rapidly build what is important for your business rather than worrying about undifferentiated heavy lifting.
Right. Satinder, is good. You brought up the gaming thing. We have a question from one of our viewers. It's for Arvind. If you could, the question is that how do you think online gaming will evolve as cloud computing and modern applications mature?
It's a good question, and Satyendra actually touched upon quite a lot of things using examples from games 24/7. With cloud compute becoming more normal, I think we will absolutely see an increase in the number of multiplayer and online gaming applications, because it generally studies show that it is a lot more fun when you're playing a game with someone else rather than by yourself. A lot of a lot of the tech where like what you're seeing with now the ill-gotten Stadia, for example, where the streaming of the game was happening on the cloud, and the application of the game itself was running on a very simple device. And those are things that are pretty exciting. We are now also seeing folks like Netflix and Amazon also getting into the gaming space, primarily because they are players, big players when it comes to using cloud technologies, and they are leveraging that in order to open up or have accessibility for folks to start playing games. The other interesting part for me is also is for the creators, because with the with all of the cloud computing, or all of the computing happening on the cloud, you're kind of unshackled by hardware, which is kind of what I talked about earlier. So I believe that going forward, we'll also start seeing people not just playing games using cloud-based technologies, using multiplayer functionalities in a game, but also making games inside, because of the ability to have your compute running on the cloud. Great examples of that is like, Fortnite Creative is available for you, where you can create experiences for the Fortnite game. You have Roblox, which also allows you to create games on the engine itself. And of course, you have like Facebook coming with Horizon Worlds, which allows you to create applications for their quote unquote metaverse. So I think with the ability for you to just offload the computing to the cloud, we're going to see, of course, games, high quality games which are unshackled by the hardware that you're running on, and you're also going to see creators contributing to your game making application itself because of this. And of course, all of the other things that Satyendra talked about, like a smart way, and a smart way of figuring out what a player is gonna play by throwing all of the machine learning and all of the AI on the cloud, so the compute happens over there. And we'll see more and more personalized gaming, more and more matchmaking that suits to your kind of gameplay itself. And it's definitely an interesting direction where the gaming industry is headed.
Right. Uh, Sanjay, you brought out a very interesting point. While the pandemic was an unfortunate event, but it's kind of uh, you know it's kind of strengthened and actually brought people to understand the work that you all do as far as technology goes. What are the opportunities that lie ahead in the next 2 years? Sanjay, starting with you, and then Rakshit.
You're asking specifically for Nika or in general for tech?
For tech, and then Nika.
I think, I mean, see, I've been working for 25 years. There have been many busts. There have been many booms. There have been like some really bad busts. Three, four of them I can recall. But the fact is, tech has always been evergreen. And there's been, you know, infinite, if I can use that word, demand for tech talent. So I think it's never gone out of flavor, and it never will for at least the foreseeable future. I think in that sense, uh, from a global standpoint, I don't think anything has changed in terms of importance of tech. I think it was always there. It's People say engineers are like an endangered species because you just can't hire enough of them. You can ask one recruiter or any one CTO. Nobody will ever tell you that. Listen, I've like been able to finish my headcount, right? So I think the importance has always been there, will always be there. If there were people in certain companies, but here's a segment of companies which have changed their view. We haven't changed our view. Amazon hasn't changed their view. Bunch of everybody here would not have changed their views in the panelists, right? They always knew tech was paramount to the success of their companies. But there are a bunch of companies now who are not traditional companies who never thought uh, tech could be a game changer even for them. I think they've seen a lot of their worldview has changed, especially in India. If you see, like, without naming any brands, if you see a bunch of D2C brands, they've done so well. A lot of the traditional players are now thinking that they have missed the boat, and if they don't act soon, they may become irrelevant also, right? So, but other than that, in the ways of working, the way we work, we adopt a pod model made famous by Spotify, just holistic teams that own metrics, and they go and execute on those. And all of these pods are tightly aligned, loosely coupled, and that works beautifully. So we'll just do more and more of that. In fact, I think this model is so successful even for us. We don't follow it 100%. I think nobody does, but to whatever extent, I'm a big evangelist of this, and we'll just do more and more of this. So just want to share that perspective.
Okay. Arvind?
Well, I don't have anything else to add as such. I think the technologies are here to stay, and I'm sure we'll all agree that we are living through an exciting period of technological change. And in fact, the last 5 years alone, we have seen huge advances in cloud computing and connectivity with artificial intelligence and automation and interactive and immersive technologies, and across all of aspects of business and even our everyday society, we are seeing shifts emerge. And as these technologies continue to evolve and in some cases revolutionize how we are going to work, how we are going to play, how we are going to interact, the door has just opened up. And we are going to be seeing more richer and more immersive experiences, more immersive content, be it the games that you're going to be playing, the movies that you're going to be watching. And all of that is the bedrock of all of that is really modern applications and cloud compute is in my opinion. So we are living in an interactive age, and things that we seemed quite impossible earlier now seems in our grasp. And I think we just embrace the agile way of working, embrace modern technologies, and embrace just cloud technologies as such, so that we can enter this exciting period of the next of this decade, really.
Right. Rakshit?
So I think we are going through a very interesting cycle where there's a very highly capital immersion cycle that's happening in the world right now, where the lot of focus is on growth, new technology, innovation, and so on. I think the one thing that stays constant through various cycles of economy is the ability for us to innovate as far as technology is concerned. But based on where the economic cycles are headed globally, the focus shifts a little bit. So, like I said, right now we are kind of focused on doing high growth innovations. But in a few years from now, when the capital cycle kind of cools down a little bit, I think the focus is going to become more in terms of doing more with less, right? But that being said, technology innovation is a constant, and it'll shift function based on the global economic cycle that we are in.
Right. So I had just one more question, and I'd of course request the panelists to keep it brief for paucity of time. Uh, all of you've spoken about the opportunities and exactly where each one of you stand in terms of the modern application development. What are the biggest challenges? It's open to the entire platform. What are the biggest challenges we face today? Sanjay, maybe you could start.
I think biggest challenge is to really what are the things you want to say no to uh, uh, from a business opportunity, and what are the ones which you really focus on, because there is this tendency to do a lot of things. There are a lot of great ideas everybody has, which are adjacent to what you're doing, right, in general. So saying no to them is as important as the ones you pick. And second, the build versus buy discussion. You tend to buy a lot of things, which is the right thing to do. You need to have a clear build versus buy philosophy. But when you buy, you have to be very careful that you don't want to buy anything where there's a chance of losing your user to them. You want to own your user, and that's like that's a, so these are two things that are big on my mind.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Rakshit?
So I would say what keeps me awake at night, I think two parts. One is making sure that your whatever you have running, the day-to-day experience of the user is not compromised in any way. And then the second is how do you plan for the next stage of growth uh, that you want the business to achieve, right? And what do you do so that the technology cycle, all of us know about technical debt and so on. So what do you do to build and invest in a platform that the technology cycle can be as long as practically feasible? So solving for the next round of scale, next round of growth, the next line of business, so to speak. So those are the primary focus areas, I would say.
Arvind?
My challenges, I would say, is more on like scale, support, and skills. When you talk about scale, it's like how do we make sure that as many people can get on the application and have no problems? I'm sure all of you folks have or thinking about that. Support is like when the application has a problem, there needs to be folks who are on it. And considering that there is like the tech that we are developing out of Epic Games is pretty much bleeding edge. There's a lot of skill gap that's also there. Like how many people in the world are able to support you if the number of people who are aware, who know about it is very low. So that's kind of what the challenge is, and that's kind of what we at Epic Games are working on, which is skilling people up, provide support through the skilling that we are doing, and then that will then help us with the scale of what we are trying to do. And those are the challenges, and that's kind of what we're trying to solve here.
Satinder?
I think what our customers are telling us, there are three broad challenges. The first one is the technical debt. And I think Rakshit did talk about that. So, how quickly can you modernize, release capabilities? That's the first part. The second challenge that I see is from a culture standpoint, enabling the teams to get into this whole notion of innovating rapidly and scaling. And I think during our previous discussion, there was a talk about how do you hire the right kind of people, but there are also organizations who have inherited not only a technical debt but a people debt also. So how do you enable your workforce, keep them skilled, is the second challenge. The third one, which possibly is the most profound one, is how do you prepare for next set of technologies? Whether it's going to be maybe next year we have this similar conversation, we would be talking about edge computing, quantum computing, decentralized data networks. So how do you keep yourself up to date with the technologies, find the right kind of experimentation so that you are better enabled for exploiting the next wave of technology as you move forward?
Right. Satinder, very valid point. Thank you all for joining in for this very, very interesting conversation. I'm sure that customers and employees both are going to engage more and more using these technologies of modern applications, and I'm sure there'll be a lot more conversations like this into the next year. Wishing all of you a very safe and prosperous new year. Thank you very much once again, Sanjay, Satinder, Rakshit, and Arvind for joining us in this very engaging conversation. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye bye.
Bye.
Forbes India presents AWS The Mavericks in association with Matrix Partners India.